The Hyundai Elantra is a pretty fun little car, and that's one nice thing I like about it. It's a sedan that comes with 4 different powertrain options. Single drivetrain choice, but because it's a Hyundai, it has a ton of available features depending on which trim level you're looking at. And in this video, I'm going to unpack the Elantra and show you everything that you need to know about this ride. Pricing for the Elantra in Canada starts at around $25,400 versus $23,400 down in the US, and then the price goes up from there. The hybrid version of the ride in the US is a few $1,000s more. In Canada, it's close to $8,000 more. But there are a lot more features you get in our model for hybrid because we've only got a single choice that's available versus tiered options down in the US. So whether you decide to go for the hybrid or not is going to depend on how much you drive. And that's really the big factor because you do get pretty good fuel savings when you look at the hybrid version of the ride. Color-wise, this one is in the Amazon Gray Metallic. And with the redesign that the Elantra got a few years ago, I think the color choice does work. I'd probably go for a blue myself, but it looks very solid at the same time. You're only going to find the Elantra front-wheel drive regardless of the trim level of the vehicle that you're looking at. But Canadian winters, wintertime driving, etc., just get yourself a good pair of winter tires. And then the handling there. Oh yeah, responsiveness. Responsiveness is absolutely there. And the turning radius. Oh yeah. I mean, no complaints there, and this isn't even the performance versions of the car. You look at the N line or the N version and it's going to handle way better in comparison, but I think that would be more than acceptable for the majority of people looking at this car. There are a series of different wheel sizes and styles available, 15-inch on the low end up to 19-inch, with the 19s being exclusive for the N trim level of the Elantra. Inside of the Elantra, you're going to find LED headlamps regardless of the trim level that you're looking at. And the LED lamps, as you approach the car at night, you flip them on, look pretty nice. Design-wise, there's a little black metallic bezel that traces in between both lamps. I think if that was a little LED light strip, it would probably take the front end of this to the next level a little bit. Technology-wise, in most trim levels of the ride, you're not going to find parking sensors, but in some of the higher trims, like the N, there would be a forward park sensing system. But the majority of trim levels are not going to have that technology available. There are 4 different powertrain options that you're going to find inside of the Elantra. So there's a 2-liter non-turbocharged engine standard, there's a 1.6 turbo, there's a 2-liter turbo, and then you've got this, which is a 1.6-liter hybrid. Pushes out 139 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. So it's not the most powerful car, but when you go up to sport mode or in manual mode using the hand shifter, let's get up to highway speed in 3, 2, and... $100. Okay. So is it going to win you some drag strip competitions? Absolutely not. But if you're looking for a good car to get you from A to B and that also has really good fuel economy, I mean, that was pretty solid. As I was mentioning, if you want the best possible performance inside of the Elantra, go for the N version of the ride. If you want kind of like a middle ground, the N line is absolutely the way to go, but then you lose the benefits of being a hybrid. So you've got different choices there. And underneath the hood here, I like the way that Hyundai's designed this. You've got a little cover there with the hybrid badge, and you know it's a hybrid because of the orange wiring. If you're doing work yourself, you can easily change your oil, and then top up your wiper fluid. But one thing you want to make sure of is make sure that you actually take care of your ride. Regularly scheduled maintenance and regular oil changes. Cars can run into problems if you don't maintain them properly. So honestly, you want to probably change oil every 6,000 to 8,000 kilometers at the very most, or at least every 6 months, and then just regularly schedule maintenance to make sure that this car will last. The side view mirrors inside of the Elantra are manual folding. Some do have turn signals built in, and then there's also a blind spot monitoring system. So if somebody enters the blind spot on either side, it'll highlight on either side there to let you know. There is some intelligent access, so with the fob on you, you can push there in order to lock the doors, and then just slide in in order to unlock. Get to that interior in a second, but you've got some different highlights depending on the trim level and the color choice that you've gone with. Along the side here though, these buttons are the same, so window controls, side view controls with some storage. There are a few different speaker choices inside of the ride, with the higher trims having an 8-speaker Bose audio system. You've got basic pedals there. These are the trays from the factory, and I recommend, yeah, perfect, so you can see both. So you've got the carpeted mats and the trays. Go for the trays. They're so much easier to clean down in comparison, whether that's from Hyundai directly or aftermarket through WeatherTech. The majority of trim levels of the Elantra are going to have manual seats. So you can adjust the seat moving it forwards or backwards, you can raise it up or down, and then adjust the backrest this way. Some versions of the car do have power adjustable seats. We'll get there in a second, and hold on. So with the seat as far down as it's gonna go here, up overhead, I've got, I'd say about 3 inches of head space. So I'm 6 feet tall, so if you're 6'3", you should be okay. Maybe 6'4" if you lean back enough, but it'll be tight if you're much bigger than that. The seat overall is comfortable. There are a few different types of seating material available too. Cloth and leatherette seats are going to be the standard choice in the majority of trim levels, and they're nice. When you get into the N and the N line, they have different seats. I love the seats inside of the N, and just the N styling in general, so much nicer than the rest of the lineup. Not saying that this is bad. It's simple, but the N is just different. Looking at the steering wheel as well as the cluster screen inside of the Hyundai Elantra. Now this is the hybrid version of the vehicle. If you want to walk through on a different version or on the infotainment, you'll find that down in the description of this video. Now there are 2 different versions of this screen that are available, so it's the same size technically, it's just that this one has some more customization options that you won't find in some of the lower trim levels of the ride. But I'll point those out as we dive in. So first thing I'm going to point out is that the steering wheel inside of the ride might be heated. If you've got the heated button, just down by your right knee there under the climate control settings, you've got a single level that's available. And then you've got a manual telescoping steering wheel across the lineup. There's a release. You're just going to go in and out, up and down to find that perfect position. Once you do, you're going to click it and lock it back into place. Just down by your left knee, you've got a few different buttons that are available. So this one gives you the option of increasing or decreasing the brightness of the cluster screen. If your 12-volt battery is giving you problems, what it's going to do is re-engage that battery. And then you've also got your traction control system. So the only time you really want to toggle that one off is if you're running into slippery, snowy conditions, etc. But outside of that, leave that one turned on. And then there are so many different buttons in stock. So let's start off with the left-hand side. So you've got your stick along the left side, obviously for your blinkers there, and then flashing your high beams out. Now with your light modes, you've got a series of different modes that are available. You're going to be in the auto mode the majority of the time, but auto mode during the daytime, you can't permanently lock your high beams out. You go into this auto headlamp mode. So what that means is that if the vehicle recognizes high beams are needed, it turns them on automatically. If somebody's oncoming, it turns them off before turning them right back on again. If you want to permanently lock your high beams out, go into the upper headlamp mode. You can then push away, pull towards you in order to turn them off. It's just that in the auto mode, pushing away puts you into the auto headlamp mode. At nighttime, if you wanted to lock them on, push away again in order to permanently lock your high beams on. Then you've got so many different buttons. So the ones along the left side here, you've got a voice command prompt. You'd be able to do things like change songs. Hold on, push that again just so you can see some options because there are so many things. So you could navigate using your voice. There are different vehicle controls. So you can control the climate using your voice. You can set different climate temperatures, fan speed, etc. Toggle the heated steering wheel on or off, turn on the seat warmers, and so many things. So what I'd recommend when you first get into your Elantra, go through this setting and really get the hang of it because it's great. And then if you've got a phone connected, so Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, etc., if you do a long push and hold, that is going to bring up your phone assistant. So that's either going to bring up Siri or Google. You've got your volume rocker this way, so you can move up or down, push in the middle in order to mute. You've also got your volume rocker down the middle there. You can answer or hang up on a phone call. And then you've got a few other buttons here. So this one is going to let you go between all of your presets. So if you've got that set up, you can see that moving in there. if you take that same button, if you push and hold it, that is going to act as a seek button. So up or down that way. You've got to be pretty quick on the draw, but if you don't have your preset set up, just use the voice command prompt to change stations. And then you've got 2 custom buttons there. Actually, hold on, the vehicle just turned on. So if we go into this screen for a second, you can see, yeah, there we go. It's trying to charge up right now. Neat view, but squirrel. But we've got 2 different custom buttons there. So your mode button and then a selector button. So inside of the infotainment, if you go into your setup, you've got all of your buttons. So there are technically 3. You've got your button down there, and then the 2 on the steering wheel. So what does your custom button there do? So navigating through your custom steering wheel button, you can have it go to the hybrid mode, do nothing, rejecting calls, go to the home screen, etc. So if I say hybrid, I push this button now, it brings me into the available hybrid screen. So pretty simple. And then you've also got your additional button there, and that's the mode selector. So what sources do you tend to listen to? Because now if we take that button, if we push it, it's going to jump you between all of the selected sources that you've done. And then you saw your up and down switch along the steering wheel there earlier. So this one there. And then you've got your stick along the right-hand side, and it's going to be for your wipers. So just up there, if you go down a single level, that puts you into the intermittent level, which means you can then use the rocker switch in the middle to figure out how fast or slow rain's hitting the windshield, and then go up to your down to your crazy modes. Then you can pull in towards you in order to get that wiper fluid going. The pad along this side, so these buttons are going to control what's going on inside of that cluster screen, which we'll touch on in a minute. But then you've got cruise control here too. So there's only a single type of, well, technically there are 2 different types. If you've got a manual transmission in the Elantra, it's going to be old school regular cruise, but inside of the majority of Elantras, it's going to be the smart cruise control system. So it's an adaptive cruise. It's your set it and forget it. So let's say if you set it at 80, the car in front of you slows down, yours will also brake. They change lanes, you change lanes, it's going to pick you back up to your set speed. But to use the system is simple. You toggle it on this way, it's not going to work because I'm currently parked, so you have to be actively driving. You push that and it's going to set it at your current speed. You then increase or decrease 1 kilometer, 1 mile per hour at a time, push and hold up or push and hold down to increase at larger increments or decrease at larger increments. There's a distance indicator, so it's how close or far are you from the leading vehicle with 4 unique options. So think of that like a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi for how close or far you are away from that leading vehicle. And inside of your vehicle settings there, not pushing it, I guess that helps if I do, driving convenience, smart cruise control. That's going to let you adjust out the distance. So you can adjust your distance this way, or through the main mode there, and then how fast or slow do you want your vehicle to react? So do you want to accelerate faster, slower, etc., and then your reactions or the reaction speed for the smart cruise control system. Pretty simple. And then you've got this button. So there are 2 different types of lane keeping systems inside of Hyundai vehicles. The first one is going to be a lane keep assist. So if you take that button, if you push and hold it, you can see there that icon disappears. So that one there, what that does, if you start to veer over into a lane without signaling, it's going to nudge you back into the lane that you were in. Versus if you just tap the button, it's going to be a lane follow assist. So the car is not self-driving, but if you're not paying attention, your hands are off the steering wheel, it can actually follow the lane for you perfectly. Very little user input is required. In my experience, you can keep your hands off the steering wheel for about 30 seconds or so before it makes you put your hands back on the wheel again. So the vehicle is not self-driving, but when you use the smart cruise control system with the lane follow assist, it gets very, very close. But if you want to see a live demonstration of actually using this system, you'll find it down in the description of this video. Then inside of the cluster screen, you've got so many different options. So along the left-hand side is going to be your speedometer along with your current fuel level, done 2 different ways. So you've got different gauge views there, your current outside temperature. Since this is the hybrid, we know that we're good, ready to drive. And then you've got your fuel economy level there. It's currently at 0, so if we go down a level, you can see there's a tiny little notch, and that essentially lets me know that I'm at 5.4 liters per 100. So that's essentially going to be your fuel economy level there, just shown slightly differently. You've got your drive mode that you're currently in, so down by your right knee, there's a button there. You can change between all of the different drive modes, and you see there, so it customizes the look. So inside of the infotainment system, if you go into your setup, screen layout or display, you're going to go to, look at that, your cube or classic view. So cube view gives you this funky little look. I'm not crazy about that one, so you could either link it to your drive mode. So then as you adjust out your drive mode there, it's going to change up the look for you, or you can permanently lock it out to one of the other modes. So let's say if you love the fuel economy you get in the smart mode, but you love the look of the sport mode there, you could adjust that out. And then you've got your current odometer along the bottom. Top side is the current gear that you're in. So park, reverse, neutral, drive, push over for your sport mode. And then you can move between all of your available gears that way too. If you've never used your hand shifter before for that manual mode or paddle shifters, you'll find a walkthrough on how it's done down in the description. You've got a series of different page buttons that are available there too. So as you hit the page icon, that jumps you between some different options. We'll dive into that in a second. And then you've got your gauge here. So I want you to think of this view if it's not a regular speedometer view. So you've got your speedometer view there, but in this view, this is your hybrid gauge. So if you were to put your foot down, you're using it power, so it's going to go up this way. Think of that like your traditional tachometer. And then as you go to brake, it's regenerative braking in order to try to charge the battery up. So it's going to drop down this way. And you've got your battery gauge there for the hybrid component side of things. So it charges up a few different ways through regenerative braking. And then as you drive, the motor is going to turn on in order to try to keep that battery charged up. But it leads to pretty good fuel economy when you've got them both going and you're just cruising. And then hitting the pages button, so you saw there, jumps us between different things. If you are on this screen, you push and hold OK, that's going to dive you into a boatload of available settings inside of the infotainment system. Hitting here gets you a few different options for your fuel economy. And then you've got different modes there. So your current trip is your last ignition cycle. So when the vehicle is last turned on, that's how far you've gotten. Since refueling is since you've filled up the vehicle. And then since reset. So that's essentially like a master reset. You can see here, it says hold OK on some of these in order to be able to reset. So all you do, take that button to go up and down, push and hold it, and that zeroes you out. From there, you've got your little idle mode. So when you're going to notice as you drive that the engine is going to come on and you're going to see a line shooting across, it's going to be charging up that battery. And you can see your battery charge level there and there. And then you've got your current vehicle speed. This is the 10.25-inch infotainment system that you're going to find inside of the Hyundai Elantra. There are two different versions of the screen that you're going to find inside of the vehicle. You've got this larger one that features factory navigation, and then there's an 8-inch version that doesn't have factory nav. If you want to walk through on the smaller version, you'll find that down in the description of this video. This is for the hybrid version of the ride, but the feature sets are going to be similar across the lineup. So let's dive in. I'll show you what you need to know. You can see there, home screen, you've got your current date and time. And then you've got a series of other options here, but along the top left, you can move into different driver profiles. The benefit there is that if you've got multiple people driving the vehicle, you'd be able to do things like set up all of your different presets, phones that are connected, addresses, and things like that. And it's going to lock it into your individual profile. You'd be able to link out your digital key, so your smartphone as a key on top of that. You can adjust out your driver profile images. You can change users. So there are 3 options available. You're either going to have driver 1, 2, or guest. Guest is going to have some limitations, such as performing a full factory reset. And then I'll point a few others out as we go. You've got your basic home screen button there. You can tap here in order to toggle the display off. Button push to bring it back again. And then you've got the option of editing the home icon. So you can edit it this way, or if you just push and hold, that's going to bring you into this screen. You could then push and hold there in order to drag the icons around in order to customize the layout in between pages. So if you wanted to move different icons out between one page or the other, you'd have the flexibility to be able to do it, or you saw reset to the default settings. You can also scan the QR code on your phone in order to be able to pull up the fully digital owner's manual. So if this video doesn't help out, you'd be able to dive into that owner's manual instead. You've got your current date and time that you can tap in order to be able to adjust your date and time. And then you've got your current connection level along the top right side. And then let's dive line by line and I'll show you everything you need to know. Starting off with the hybrid version of the vehicle. So you've got your available energy flow. So if we push here, you've got this little split screen that's available. But where this comes into play, as you start to drive, you'll notice that the energy flow shows up here. And that's essentially letting you know that the vehicle is attempting to recharge the battery as you're driving. So it's a simple screen setup there, and then back into navigation. So you've got factory nav inside of the ride. It does have pinch to zoom capabilities. And then as you start to move around, you'll notice that we've kind of got this like end destination. So if you know roughly where you need to go, you could kind of do a drag around. You can bring it back onto yourself by pushing the icon up there. And then you can tap here in order to be able to change up your heading, so north, up, etc. So you've got different views that are available. You can you can adjust your guidance volume. So what level do you want the voice or sound effects to pop up on? Or you can mute them out completely. So if you don't want to get the person telling you you've got a turn coming up in 300 meters, you can adjust that out. You can zoom in and out this way, and you can set an auto scale too, so it's going to zoom in and out as you get closer to your end destination. You can tap here in order to look at some nearby information, toggle your traffic info on or off. You can search for addresses this way, so latitude first, longitude second if you're going by GPS coordinates. You can search by a point of interest icon there too if you'd like to. Select through, and then you've got all of these options. Let's choose one that's a bit further away. Let's go right now. There we go, and you can set it as your destination. So if we just set as destination, let's go no. Perfect, so we've got our available routes. So if there are multiple ways that you can get to your end destination, you can select through there. On top of that, you can also add in a waypoint. So let's say if you wanted to add in something along the route. So maybe you wanted to fill up on gas. So we can see different gas stations that are available. So let's just tap a random one here and okay. We've added that in as a waypoint and then just calculate. And that's going to give us options for alternative versus recommended. We can add in additional options, look at some route avoidance options too. So avoiding highways, toll roads, or ferries, or just go ahead and
guidance will start now.
Start guidance. So you've kind of got this little turn by turn there, or you can push across in order to get to this wild multi-screen. You can also slide here in order to get some different views, hide or show these areas. You've got detailed options, simplified views, or you've just got that minimalistic look. On top of that, if you take this button along the steering wheel, so your Pages button, you can push that in order to get to your turn-by-turn directions right inside of the cluster screen. So it's not full map and cluster, but at least your turn-by-turn directions are there. And what's showing up in the cluster screen there is strictly for factory navigation. So if you have your phone hooked up, it's not going to show your maps through your phone inside of the cluster screen. You can cancel your route out there if you'd like to. You can tap here to see all of the different options. If your phone was connected, you could call. You can reroute if you'd like to on top of that.
Route guidance will start
or
now.
You can cancel the route.
Meters, turn left and then turn left.
There we go. So we've canceled the route out. Hitting this is going to give you the addresses that you've searched for again. And then if you wanted to, you could push and hold in order to delete certain addresses too. It's simple. Tapping here gives you a little split screen. So if you wanted to have a little split screen there with your compass view or just like a basic clock or your fuel economy levels, you've got that flexibility. Back home from there. And then you've got a series of navigation settings too, and there are a lot of them. So you can search, look at point of interest icons, there's traffic info, your home or work address is here too. So if you were to tap the voice command prompt on the steering wheel, so you'd be able to then say navigate home, navigate to work, whatever the case may be. You can tap here in order to edit out these icons as well, or turn the display off. And then, actually, there are different settings that are available for navigation here too. So you can show your vehicle speed on the map, show point of interest icons, different options for fuel prices. Actually, in this one, point of interest icons, so you can select which options are actually showing up inside of the map as you go. Guidance options, so globally, do you want to avoid ferries, toll roads, HOV, carpool lanes, things like that. Back again, guidance location, nothing exciting there. That was that little mini screen that we saw. Border crossing if you're going cross-border, basic alerts, nothing exciting there, and then different map options. Do you want to be in 3D mode? So you've got 2D, north, up, etc. Auto scale means it's going to zoom in and out as you get closer to your next turn. You've got different font sizes. Very, very subtle difference there, but you can adjust that out. Your symbol color, so your little Star Trek-y symbol, do you want to have a different color scheme that's available? And that's it there. Previous destinations, you can choose to save them or not. So with that deselected, when you go to search for addresses, it's just not going to save it anymore. So really good. I mean, this is a media vehicle, so that should be turned on. GPS info, if you ever break down, you need to call a tow, whatever the case may be, that's your actual GPS location. That's the basics of, that's everything you need to know about navigation inside of the ride. So let's go ahead and add in a phone. Starting off on the iPhone side of things.
Select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
You're just going to go to Bluetooth and find the vehicle name. Perfect. PIN numbers match up, so let's go ahead and pair. If you want all contacts and favorites to sync up, this is not my car, so I'm saying no to that one. And we're connected right now over the phone for Bluetooth, so you can make phone calls and you can also stream audio. But you've also got the option for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay.
Download was unsuccessful.
No, that's
Would
it.
you like to try again?
That's it, unsuccessful, because I selected no when I first hooked the phone up. But you've got CarPlay capabilities. Inside of this larger screen, it's a wired connection. And you need to make sure you use a USB-A cable that has the data transfer icon there. And you're just plugging yourself in just above the shifter. And let's go ahead and just, bam, plug in there. Okay, so usually that should auto launch. If it doesn't, hop back home here. Phone projection. Well, that's odd. So let's just disconnect, reconnect. There we go. Perfect. I just didn't plug the USB cable in.
On purpose, though, just like you wanted to.
Yeah, I just didn't plug the USB cable in all the way. And now it's asking, do you want to allow CarPlay while the phone is locked? Yes, you want to make sure you do that. And then you've got CarPlay available there. Now, if you can't even get to that step because CarPlay is not working, check down in the description of this video for some common CarPlay fixes that you can try. But we're connected to CarPlay. You've got your current time and connection level along the side. And then these are the apps that were last opened. So your last open map, audio application, and then miscellaneous app with all of the different icons that are available. You can tap here to go back to a home screen. And then let's just pause that, push again there in order to get back to that icon view. But you can swipe across. Now on the steering wheel, there's a voice command prompt. So if you do a light button push, that's going to be the assistant for the vehicle. But if you do a long button push and hold, that is going to activate your Siri assistant. You can tap here in order to go back to that view. You've got Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Waze that are available inside of this vehicle. But unfortunately, no pinch to zoom capabilities. So you're just zooming in and out this way. I'm a big fan of Waze because if there are speed traps, people are pretty good at marking that stuff off. And you can mark things off on the route as you go too. But maps are available there. Live One's a radio app. You've got YouTube Music that are available here too. It's only YouTube Music, so you don't have video playback support inside of this screen. You can also kind of customize the look here a tiny little bit. So if you hop into your settings, you can toggle on driving focus, you can change the appearance, and you can also adjust out the wallpaper. So if there's a different wallpaper style that works better for you, you've got the flexibility of changing it out. And then you can also edit out these icons. So in your phone settings, you're going to hop into your settings, general, and then CarPlay, find your vehicle. You can forget it or you can customize. So if you tap customize, you could then do a drag and drop in order to be able to adjust out these icons. So if you wanted them positioned in a different location, you can do that. Anything with a minus next to it, you can actually remove it from the screen. But if you've removed too many apps or the apps you didn't want to, you can add them back in. If you don't like what you've done, you've adjusted this too much, on the top right side of your phone, you can reset. So you just tap reset, reset, and that's just going to bring you back to the factory default icon layout. You can hop back to the Hyundai home screen this way, hop back into CarPlay. Under the screen, if you tap the setup icon, that's going to bring you up to this setting. Tapping device connections brings you up here. If you look at your device connections, we're currently connected over CarPlay for the device. There are phone projection settings that we can't adjust because I'm connected. So disconnecting, you could then go split screen CarPlay there too. So what that looks like, I'm not a fan of the split screen this way, but you can toggle it on there if you'd like. So it's going to take a second. Let's go back home and connect. So you've got your little split screen here. So where this would really come into play is maybe you wanted to hide things as necessary, but you've got that available. Like I said, I'm not crazy about that split screen. I'd rather just use up full screen CarPlay myself. So just go, device connections and projection settings, and then disable. So you can do that for both Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. Hopping back into your device connections, we're now connected over to the iPhone for Bluetooth, for phone calls, and for media. But that's how you set up Apple devices inside of the Elantra. Setting up Android devices inside of the Elantra is pretty straightforward. If you weren't on this screen, you're on the home screen, all you're going to do, you could navigate to phone if there's no phone connected, but we're going to go into Setup, Device Connections, Device Connections, Device Connections there, and then just tap Add New.
Turn Bluetooth on from your device in order to search. On your device, select the name that matches vehicle name on the screen.
There we go, and going to take a second there. PIN numbers match up, so let's go ahead and pair. Perfect. And we are now connected. Now there are 2 phones connected, so you can do a drag and drop in order to say who gets connection priority. You can also select who's going to be listened to for phone calls, for media, etc. So we're connected now to the vehicle, specifically for the phone, for Android. So if we hop in the phone, you've got either or, so we can choose which one we want to actively connect to. And there we go. So we're fully connected. Now on the phone, it's also asking, do I want to allow access to contacts and messages?
The contacts download is starting.
So that's eventually going to say no, just because I selected no. It's going to give us an error eventually. But we're connected now, so you can make phone calls and stream audio. But you've also got support for Android Auto. So what you're going to do, USB cable.
Download was unsuccessful.
So it said unsuccessful because I selected no. But you've got Android Auto support, and it's got to be USB Type A with a data transfer icon. So just plug yourself in under the screen. And we're just going to plug in here. There we go. Android Auto would like to, so just select next. And a few seconds in, we should be fully connected. Look at that. Beautiful. You can tap here in order to be able to get to a little icon view. Tap again, but you've got your current time, connection, and battery levels, along with some other miscellaneous apps. Now, you can also tap the map here if you wanted to go full screen. Tap again in order to go split screen on Android Auto, and then tap again there. Now, I do have Waze installed on this device, but if you've got Waze installed on your Android and it's not showing up there, check down in the description of this video for a little walkthrough on things that you can try in order to make that show up. Then, it's simple to use. You've got pinch to zoom capabilities, which is definitely something I love inside of Android Auto, but you can also adjust out the icon layout here. In order to do it, on your phone, you're going to search for Android Auto. You're going to go into Android Auto settings, and when you get there, scroll down to customize launcher. You're just going to tap that, and you can see all of the icons that are available. You can add things in, so anything with a check mark next to it, you can add or remove. But if you do a push and hold, you'd also be able to adjust out the layout. Now, in order for these changes to come into effect, all you're going to do, disconnect from Android Auto. You're going to reconnect to Android Auto, and in a second there, it's going to relaunch. Hopping into the icon tray again, you can see the changes that we've made have now come into effect. Then on the steering wheel, if you push and hold the voice command prompt, that's going to bring up your phone assistant that way, so making phone calls, things like that. Hopping back home by hitting the setup icon, you could turn the display off, hit the home icon to jump back into Android Auto, but if you go into your setup, device connections there, we've got both phones that have been connected. So you can either be hooked up to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both of them simultaneously, but if we disconnect from Android Auto, you'd then be able to select which phone does what. So if you wanted one phone connected for phone calls, one connected for media, you can do that. So you can kind of do a little mix and match there. If you tap delete devices, mark all and delete, and yes, that's going to remove both devices or whatever selected devices from the vehicle. But it's that easy setting up Android and iPhone devices inside of the Elantra. Hopping back, you've got a series of other options. So basic Bluetooth prompts and then system info. So you can change out the vehicle name. So if you don't want it to be Elantra, you want it to be something else, you've got the flexibility of being able to adjust out your name. You can add in a pass key, and then there's your projection settings. So if you wanted to get split screen, Android Auto, or Apple CarPlay. And we'll get to the rest of the setup later because there's a lot of info. You've got a voice memo that's available, so you can record a voice memo directly to the vehicle. There are a series of different climate settings that are available here too. So you can adjust out your climate this way, but then just underneath the screen, you've got all of your other climate settings. So if you wanted to, you've got dual zone climates. You can adjust it this way. As you adjust down here, it adjusts out inside of the infotainment system too. Toggle your heated steering wheel on off. You can adjust your fan speed this way. And then you've got your other climate control settings there too. So you can easily adjust it out this way. You've got defog, defrost, etc. So I always recommend just keeping those ones turned on. Valet mode's available with blue links, so it's going to essentially lock the screen out. You've got quiet mode, which means that it's only going to play audio through the front speakers. There's HD radio data where you can look at traffic, fuel information too. And you've got your radio. So radio, you've got AM, FM, or SiriusXM. And you can see there, you've got all of your presets that have been set up. So you can add in additional stations there if you'd like to. So just add in a station, you just tune and hit add. You can push and hold in order to be able to adjust your stations out that way too, which is pretty useful. You can hit station list in order to figure out which stations are available around you. So if you're new to an area and you're not sure what's available, you can go there for AM, FM, and then SiriusXM. You've got all of your available stations there. And then different presets, and then you can also delete. So if there are presets that you don't want, you could there and delete, and it just removes all of the presets. So you're essentially starting from scratch again. And then in order to save presets in, you're just tapping all of your favorited stations. So you can see there when you hit it, it actually stars the icon out, which means that it's saved the preset in for you. So you go back to presets and you're set to go. If we go into SiriusXM, you can play pause live radio. You can hit this in order to enter in a station that way. And that's the same thing. If we were to go to FM for a second, you've got different options that are available there. So if the station broadcasts digitally, you'll see all your information. You can toggle HD radio on or off, and then adjust out stations that way, toggling the display off as necessary. Go here in order to go to some additional options. So if you wanted to scan FM, if you wanted to stop the scan, you could tune manually to get to kind of this old school dial tuner, which is kind of neat. Back again, it gives you the option of deleting, reordering your presets, or going into some sound settings. And there are so many options. So you've got your dynamic speed, so it's going to raise or lower the volume based off of how fast you're going. You can adjust out the focus. So do you want it focused on the driver, people in the back seat maybe, or just in the center, or do a fine tune for a balance or a fade, and then just bring it back to center. You can adjust out your sound settings there too. So treble, mid-range, bass. I found that this setup tends to work well, but what I'd recommend here, center it out and then adjust this out, playing one of your favorite songs until it sounds perfect for you. You've got some guidance options to different volumes that are available, so you can select different beeps for all of the options for navigation. Different priority volumes, so if you've got audio cranked, you're coming to an upcoming turn, it's going to lower the volume for you to hear what's going on. Welcome sound when you first turn the vehicle on or turn it off. And that. So there are a lot of settings there. And then the same thing as you go to SiriusXM, AM, FM, you'd have some additional settings there too. And if we go into, there's one other thing. So you've got media, which I'll touch on in a second. You've got all of your different vehicle settings there too, which I'll touch on last because there's a lot of info. Media's there as well. So you've got AM, FM, SiriusXM, sounds of nature. So if you wanted more of those relaxing sounds, you've got that option. Tapping this allows you to go back into your media sources there too. So if you had Android Auto or Apple CarPlay connected, if your phone was connected just over Bluetooth, if you had a USB stick with audio files on there, you'd be able to play it through the screen that way. Go into list to see all of your different settings that are available. Blue links there, there's your notifications, and then user manual. You do have a Hyundai app that's available that'll give you some options too. I unfortunately can't show you the setup process, but I'll link off to a Hyundai video on how to do it down in the description of this video. Which means, next up, all of your setup options. There's a lot here, so starting off with your driver assistant settings, you'll see these available a few different ways. So you can go back into different icon views, etc. But if we dive deeper, you've got speed limit options that are available there too. I'm not a fan, but you can get a speed limit warning, so you can see that. The icon pops up inside of the cluster with it on, but there's also speed limit assist with a little offset. So you're okay with going over or under the speed limit a bit. So where this comes into play, let's say if the vehicle recognizes that the speed's dropped from 60 down to 50, you could push down in order to set that speed. If it goes from 50 to 60, you can push up in order to increase it to that newly acquired speed. But yeah, like I said, I'm just not a fan of having that one on. Different warning methods, so there's haptic warning. So if you start to veer over into another lane without signaling, if there's something going on with the safety system, you'll get a steering wheel vibration. Almost like you're running over rumble pavement or there's something wrong with your alignment. There's not, it's just that there's something going on and the vehicle's trying to give you a heads up about that. And then you've got parking safety priority, driving priority. So what's going to happen here is that if the audio's cranked, or even if it's not, it's going to slightly lower the volume so you can hear different safety settings. You can tap here for a leading departure alert. So if you've come to a complete stop, the car in front of you starts driving, it's going to give you a heads up in the cluster screen that you should start driving as well if you haven't moved. There's driving safety. So these are just basic safety settings with the forward safety. If you're going to potentially get into a collision, it's going to let you know. See, there's blind spot safety available there too. So if somebody enters the blind spot on either side of the vehicle, see there, it's going to highlight red to let you know that somebody's in your blind spot. And you've got parking safety. So you've got your rear cross traffic alert. So as you go to back up, if somebody's coming perpendicular from the right or the left-hand side, it's going to let you know of a potential collision. And then there's so many different options. There's driving safety available there too, which we've seen. So you'll see the option of jumping into these options either as a list view or through an icon view. And I think we've hit all the necessary settings under driver assistance. You've got some eco vehicle settings there too. So coasting guide, the vehicle can essentially help you out with eco driving so you can get better fuel economy. There are some options for your cluster here too. So you can adjust the brightness of the cluster this way. There's an available blue light filter. So later on at night, you can see there. Changes up the color scheme so it gets rid of the blue light in order to make it easier for your eyes. You can have it come on automatically based off of how bright it is, or you can schedule it to come on at a certain time. And then you can adjust out your camera settings there too. So you've got your parking guidelines. So as you go to rotate the steering wheel, your guidelines there, and then with the rear view camera on, if you start to drive forward, it's going to keep it on for a few extra seconds. You can also adjust the brightness of that rear view camera. And then just some basic contents. Welcome sound when you first start the vehicle up. You get a sound, and then your tachometer display. Do you want your tach showing up in different modes? So if you don't want it showing up in the eco mode, it looks something different. So this is actually kind of neat here because inside of the eco mode now, what's going to happen here, think of this as a regular power gauge. So think of it as your RPM counter. And then charge is going to be for regen braking. So as you go to brake, you'll notice the gauge drops down there in order to try to recapture some of that charge. Let's see here, different options for climate. So recirculate air, defog, defrost, etc. I recommend keeping these things on. You've got ambient light available with different options available for the color scheme. So if you wanted something a little bit more unique, you can adjust it out, but you can also link it to your drive mode. So as you move between the eco mode, sport mode, etc., it changes up the lights. It's pretty subtle inside of the Elantra, but it's there, and you've got the flexibility of easily adjusting it out that way. For your turn signal, do you want to get 1, 3, 5, or 7 flashes? Your welcome light, do you want your side view mirror lights coming on as you approach the vehicle? When you go to lock the vehicle, do the headlamps just stay on? And then you've also got high beam assist. And I always recommend keeping the high beam assist system turned on. And I think that's it for your lights. You've got some door options. Auto lock, so when do you want the vehicle to automatically lock or unlock the doors? You want a 2-press unlock in order to be able to unlock all doors. With the smart trunk, as you walk up towards the back end of the vehicle, it can automatically open up the lift gate. And then you can also use the key fob to roll the windows down. So let's hop outside and I'll show you how those processes work. In order to be able to remote start, just push the lock button once, push and hold that circle button for a few seconds. This is the hybrid, so you won't hear much going on there. There we go. We can see their lights flash, so we are started up. And then to cancel, push and hold in order to turn it off. Now, you can get into the trunk a few different ways. You can push and hold the button there in order to do it. There's a button there that you can also push. And then there's also the option for the smart liftgate feature. So what you have to do, make sure the vehicle's locked. You have to get a little bit away for a few seconds. And then from there, just walk up towards the back end. And it's proximity censored. So you have to kind of get to this sweet spot. You can see there, you can hit the lock button now to cancel it if you don't want it to open up, but very, very useful if you don't want to go playing pocket pool to find the keys. And then you've got one other key fob trick that you can do, and that's rolling the windows down using the fob. In order to do it, push the unlock button twice and hold on the second press. So you're just going to go 1, 2, and hold. Watch this. Release it to pause it, and then push and hold again to continue the process. Pretty straightforward using it. I'm a big fan of the window down. Would be nice to see up, but at least you've got one option there. Digital key, so using your phone as a key is available. Convenient settings, rear occupant alert. So when you go to turn the vehicle off, if somebody has opened up the second row doors, it's going to give you a message in the cluster to check the back seats. Do you want the vehicle to automatically turn off after 30 minutes, 60 minutes, etc.? And there we go. Those are all of your vehicle settings. There are some basics for navigation, which we've already seen all of these settings. Your sound settings, the same thing, adjusting out your treble, mid-range, and bass, position, etc. Your device connections for available phones, or changing your vehicle name this way. User profile, so if you wanted to be able to adjust out your user, you could. Voice recognition is there, and I recommend reducing the number of prompts on, because if it's off, 94.9 FM.
Now listening to FM 94.9.
So it tells you that it's going to change the stations, versus this, 97.7 FM. It just does it. So I recommend keeping that one turned on. From there, there are some options for screen layout. And the screen layout, you've got your cluster theme, which we've already seen, so being able to adjust out different looks for the cluster. Some different screen options. So if you toggle the display off, you could get a digital clock or an analog clock with some different watch faces that are available when you're in the analog mode, or just nothing. So you turn the display off, it's a big naked screen. Split screen's available there too, so you could deselect certain things if you want to. So just by checking, you can drag and drop to see what's showing up where. So where this comes into play, if we are in, let's say, our map as an example, you can tap here in order to get to your available split screen. There are some different display options, so adjusting the brightness, blue light filter, or your camera. And then buttons. So there are 3 unique buttons available inside of this ride. You've got one just underneath the screen there, and then you've got 2 different ones up along the steering wheel there. So the button down here, what do you want it to do? Do you want it to jump to your home screen, go to your hybrid screen, do nothing? So I've got it right now set to home. So when I push this button now, it brings me to the home screen. And then general settings. You've got a bunch of different options there. Some basic system information. You can adjust your date and time. So you could dive right into this setting or just tap the clock there to hop into this screen. This is grayed out because you're in the auto mode. So if you wanted to change out your different options there, so your date and time, you could. Do you prefer to be in that military time, so 12 versus 24-hour mode? And then you can adjust for daylight savings time, yay or nay. You can adjust out the language for the screen, so English, French, Spanish, or Korean. Adjusting out the keyboard language there too. You can adjust the measurement units. That's one of the nice things about it being a fully digital cluster, is that as you adjust things out, you can see there, it adjusts everything for us. You can go Celsius versus Fahrenheit, so just underneath the screen, you can see it adjusting our units there. If you're in kilometers, you want to be in liters per 100 for your available measurement unit. Miles, if you're obviously in the US, make sure you're US miles per gallon. And then your tire pressure, do you want that measured in PSI, kPa, or bar? Some different media options. So if you've got audio cranked or on, do you want it to not come on when you turn the vehicle on? Do you want to continue playing when the vehicle's turned off? So it's going to turn on or stay on for a few minutes. And then you can also display notification changes. That's not exciting. And then you can also reset. If you had the guest profile right now, you wouldn't be able to do a full factory reset. So the factory reset is going to wipe everything. There is a way to do a soft screen reboot that'll show you in just a second, but reset all is essentially going to wipe the infotainment system. Deleting the individual profile will get rid of the settings for that selected profile. Then underneath the screen, you've got your push button start, hot button pushes to get to a series of other options. So you can hot button push to get to your map, to your navigation menu options, radio, or your basic media options there. You could push here in order to get to a home screen, push and hold there in order to essentially toggle the display off. You can seek to stations, you've got your custom button, and then you can push here in order to get to your basic setup screen. But let's say if the screen's giving you problems, so Apple CarPlay's not working, Android Auto's not working, or there's some other issue, you could do that full factory reset. But the downside of doing a full factory reset is it gets rid of everything. So what you want to do is a soft screen reboot. In order to do it, grab a paper clip, and then just above the setup button there, you can see that there's this tiny little dot. What you're going to do is take your paper clip, and you're just going to push, which is going to power down the screen. So what we've done is essentially entered a soft reboot cycle. Very similar to doing a reset on your phone. So we're essentially clearing the cache, and that should solve the majority of issues that you're facing. If that doesn't work, the next step would be doing that full factory reset. If that doesn't work, the next thing to do would be to go into your Hyundai dealer for them to diagnose what's going on. You've got heated seats inside of most trim levels of the ride in Canada, some trim levels in the US. There is a heated steering wheel available here too, and it's heated all the way around. I like that you've got a hand shifter inside of this ride. You've got your park reverse neutral drive, and then when you push over, you've got a sport mode. where you're able to adjust gears out if you'd like to. It's great. So manual mode this way and paddle shifters work the exact same way. So if you've never used them before, check down in the description for a walkthrough on how to use a hand shifter here or manual mode or paddle shifters, etc. Down here, you've got a 12-volt power point, a USB port, and this one's going to be either for Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, or for USB audio. The USB-C is strictly for charging. There's a wireless charge pad down here, and then there's a button there in order to get to your camera. There's an electronic parking brake, auto hold, and then just your basic cup holders with a teeny little armrest storage there, wrist deep inside of that box. Over here, you've got a non-lockable glove box that is a decent amount of space, and then metallic highlight. So that follows through. You've got a speaker along the door, and then you've got your vent controls there, but that metallic look goes all the way through. You're gonna find a manual dimming, rear view mirror, your basic SOS and tow mode, controls for your lights, and then a little sunroof. So single button press opens it up most of the way. Secondary is that last little bit, but that just opens things up nicely. And then yeah, just a manual control there. From there, you've got a little visor that has a ticket receipt holder on the inside. Light there too, vanity mirror built in. And then this little feller stretches out to block all of the sun that might be hitting your face. But I mean, from a visibility perspective, you're not gonna have any issues there whatsoever. That's beautiful. Visibility is great across the board. Hold on, let's go check out that second row. All right, so I've got the driver's seat set up for myself being 6 feet tall, so remember that one. Down low, you've got basic controls there, door storage with a speaker. And with the driver's seat set up this way, so for myself being 6 feet tall, inside of the second row, I've actually got foot space and knee space. Up overhead, sitting fully upright, I am like pretty much just touching, like maybe 1/4 of an inch of headspace there. So not a ton of space inside of the second row by any stretch, but if you've got kids, all of your anchor points are there. Top tethers are all up high. Nice. There's a hump in the floor. Oh, not looking forward to this. Yeah, no dice. So maybe like 5'9", 5'10" the very most for the middle seat here. It's a little bit of a tighter fit, but the seats are actually comfortable inside of the second row here, which is nice. Some cup holders built right in. Overhead, got a little handle. There's a light control there. And on this side, a handle and a hook. Down low, nothing along the driver, but the passenger side has a little mesh pocket. And then you've got 2 USB Type-C charge ports, so strictly for charging back there too. You're gonna find LED tail lamps in the rear end of the Elantra. And walking up at night, again, those highlights look solid. The overall body styling is pretty neat compared to the rounded version that was out a couple years ago. Then technology-wise, you're not gonna find a reverse park sensing system in the majority of trim levels of the ride, but the sensors are there in the highest trims. Regardless of the trim level of the ride that you're looking at, you're always going to have a backup camera, so that's a standard piece of tech. Getting into the trunk can be done so many different ways inside the Elantra. There's a release just by the driver's side door. Above the N in Elantra, if you trace up, there's a little button there that you can push. You can use the key fob 2 different ways. So there's a button on the key fob for you to push and release in order to pop it up. And then you're gonna find a smart trunk inside of the ride too. So as long as you've got the feature enabled, walk up towards the back end of the ride, and there's this sweet spot that you have to hit. You could push the lock button in order to pause it if you want to, but if you've got a if you've got a handful of bags, it is pretty useful to not have to go digging through your pockets. Looking at the features in the trunk, there's not much. There's nothing off to the right or the left-hand side. There is a little cargo tray there, and lifting that up, you're going to find a little inflator kit. So that's the actual air compressor along with the goop. So if you ever puncture a tire, you could try to steal it yourself, but there's no mini spare. There's more than enough room though if you wanted to get a mini donut aftermarket and then a small jack stand and put that down there yourself. So useful if you're going on a road trip. but you do have access to Hyundai roadside assistance. So call an 800 number, they can help out with tire changing, fuel delivery, lockout, and a number of other things. One of the added benefits of being a Hyundai owner. And then folding down the second row seats, you have to actually release it from the trunk. So there's no way to do it from the second row. You can fold down the left or the right independently. And then if you can reach it from the back, you can kind of dive into the trunk in order to push the seats down. And then one thing to note is that depending on how far forward or backwards the first row seats are, you might actually have to move them forward for those seats to actually fold flat. But there's a solid amount of space inside of this ride. And then the measurements that you're looking at, the ones specifically behind the first row, I measured them right from where that trunk door would close to just in behind the little armrest between the first row seats. So if the driver's seat, passenger seat were forwards or backwards, you lose or gain a little bit of extra space along the side. And then there's some inner trunk measurements here too, which again, tons of space inside of this boot, lots of junk you can fit inside of this trunk. Filling up fuel inside of the Elantra is done just along the driver's side. It is a locked cover, so to get inside, all you have to do, there's a release by the driver's seat. Just pull that to pop it open, and from there, it is a capped system too. So if you're really worried about fuel theft, you could look at an aftermarket cover that's got a key on it. When it comes down to fuel quality, regular 87 gas is all you need to use across the lineup. It doesn't matter if you've got the base 2-liter or the 2-liter turbocharged engine inside of the N. 87 is all you need. In the 2-liter, it could probably benefit from using an 89 or a 91, but it's not necessary. And then when you look at the overall fuel economy inside of the Elantra, you do get pretty good economy regardless of the engine choice that you look at. But when you look at the hybrid version, that's when it just separates from the rest of the pack. You get excellent fuel economy inside of this ride. And because of the battery that's in here too, it allows you to drive in full electric mode on top of that. So if you're cruising on the highway, it might just have you cruising in electric. Regular city streets, if you're just cruising, not speeding or driving like a donkey, you'll find that it has you in electric mode, which means that you're driving for pennies on top of that. Because there are two different ways that the hybrid charges up. The first way is through regenerative braking. So as you go to brake, it's going to capture some of that energy and charge the battery up. The second way is as you drive. So as you drive, the gas engine's going to kick on and then push power towards that battery to charge up as you go there. So you're not plugging in at all. It's all done through the car itself. And the hybrid system is seamless. It goes from gas to electric mode automatically on the fly, and you don't notice when it happens unless you're paying attention to the cluster screen. So far, I've got to say, I've been enjoying the Elantra Hybrid. The fuel economy inside of the ride has been fantastic, and the overall power is surprisingly good at the same time too. Well, let's do a little bit of basic en route handling here. Go. Just peppy. It's obviously not going to be as peppy as the N line or the N versions of the vehicle, but still that 195 pound-feet of torque absolutely helps out. Why would you change lanes as you see somebody coming? What a doofus. That's hilarious. All right. So en route handling there was good. Getting up to speed was also pretty solid there too. Cabin road noise is not too bad. So cabin noise, I should say, on the road. There's a little bit of noise, but I mean, it's not bad by any stretch. Considering the cost of the car, I mean, it's not active noise cancellation, but it's just like a regular car from a noise perspective. And that was everything you needed to know about the Hyundai Elantra. You can find all of the build details for this one down in the description, along with links off to Hyundai Canada and US. But if you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone if you think they might find it helpful. And until I see you next time, take care. You're only going to find the Elantra front-wheel drive. It doesn't matter which trim level.